I hope you're doing well. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. In Acts chapter 14 and verse 12, we read, "And Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker." So Barnabas and Paul, they're traveling to Lystra. We see this from Acts chapter 14 and verse 8. So they're there, and these men in verse 11 are saying, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men," or in the form of men. And they see Barnabas and they see Paul, and they say they simply must be gods. They call Barnabas Zeus, or Jupiter, the King James would read. And we see that for Paul they called him Hermes, or Mercury, or as the King James would say, Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker, he was the messenger, and the Greeks believed Hermes to be the messenger of the gods. Again, little g there. So we see from following verses that they tried sacrificing things to Barnabas and to Paul. But notice what happens in verse 14. "But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this, they tore their clothes and ran in among the multitudes, crying out and saying." They tore their clothes open. They ran in, they were crying, they were yelling about it, and they said, "Men, why are you saying these things? We are also men with the same nature as you." We're just men, just like you, "and preach to you that you should turn from these," does it say very useful things, these very beneficial things? No, it says turn from these useless things. Turn from these useless things to the living God who made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that are in them. Verse 16, "Who in bygone generations allowed all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he did not leave himself without witness, in that he did good, gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness," it says, verse 17. And then in verse 18, "And with these sayings they could scarcely restrain," barely stop the multitudes from sacrificing to them. But again, notice verse 15, "Men, why are you saying these things?" Why are you saying these things? We're men just like you. Turn from these useless things and turn to the living God. Turn away from these useless things and instead turn to the living God who's done all of these things. Really done all of these things. And the application for that today is that we might not call men gods, and we might not go around and say, "Oh yes, here's Zeus, here's Hermes," whoever it might be. We don't do that today. But there are things that we have that, as Paul would say, are useless things. And the idea is to turn from those useless things and instead turn to the living God. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.